My name is Ryan Richard. I've been river surfing for about 11 years now. I started with my buddy Paul on natural river waves in Idaho, and I'm basically just going to kind of give you a picture story of how the Bend Whitewater Park got to where it is today, talk about some of the obstacles we went through, some of the modifications and things we went through to get there. And if you have questions at any time, please feel free to just stop me. There's some pictures that might not necessarily belong in there, but bear with me. I don't think there's any kids in here, so we're okay. All right. So briefly after starting chasing waves in Idaho on natural waves, usually in the middle of winter for some reason, I think that had to do with the flows at that time, I got a job working at Boise, Idaho, at their whitewater park there, where Paul's going to go into much more in depth than I will. Basically, oh boy, now I got to figure out how to move through pictures. There we go. Let's see. And I'm going to run through a few pictures potentially quickly. This is just kind of showing the start. Again, this is all at Boise. There's Paul and I in the wave shaping booth, staying warm in the winter, and some other surfers. This was a winter day. We used to do a thing called fill and spill, where we'd use the pneumatic gates in the Boise Whitewater Park to hold back the entire river and then release it to have a short wave while the water was kind of supercharged. And then we got in trouble from Fish and Wildlife because fish were not so happy about those waves. And you can see here, those are some of those gates that were all the way up and now are being lowered. If you look off this direction downstream, you'd see fish flopping on rocks. The wave was really good. This was a natural wave in Idaho. Also this. So I worked at that wave for about just under 2 years, and then I got hired over at Bend Whitewater Park. They had been working on a wave for about 10 years before I got there. And it first started with the Bend Paddle Trail Alliance. They were exclusively kayakers, but they really wanted a whitewater park in Bend. Bend is a very outdoors community that's mountain biking, skiing, everything water, fishing. And they really wanted one of these new high-tech adjustable parks. So they built it, didn't know what they were doing, and hired me. And a couple of the things that they had to go through as far as the processes to get to that point after this kayaking group came up with this idea, this conceptual idea, they actually also fundraised for about 4 years and were able to make about 1.3 million US dollars themselves to contribute to the park, which was obviously huge. The park itself ended up costing about 10.5 million. Currently and always, the park is totally free to use for surfers. And I wish I had, that's okay. The park is separated into 3 channels. There's a fish ladder for juvenile fish. There's a whitewater channel with 4 adjustable features in it. 3 of them were designed for kayaks, and 1 of them was supposed to be a surf wave. The engineer that we hired for the park was a kayaker as well. And he thought that what we're looking at right here was an example of a good surf wave. So this is what I moved to Oregon to start with. And I hated at that point in my life to call anything unsurfable, but that thing was really hard. And it really sucked. And he had no idea. Bend Parks and Rec, whom I worked for, had no idea. So it was really tough. There was a lot of other things that were difficult with building this park because we had involved people and contributors and investors who wanted it to look very natural and to use indigenous rock and make it look really pretty, which is all fine and good until it comes to functionality. It was actually quite dangerous when it was first built in multiple ways. They stacked these rocks. They tried to use almost no concrete or grout. So they built, all the groins of the waves were just giant sieves where your hands and feet could go through, and it wasn't even that stable. They were already crumbling despite trying to pack them in there very carefully. And again, sorry for the order, it's a little out of context. We're looking at the top wave right now. This is in the first few months that I was there. using some of the gates. There's a really high-tech drawing that I have. And this is, again, another shot of the surf wave. That little face was about this tall, and like I said, it was basically unsurfable. So, and again, even the down ramp there, you can see, that was one of the only places they used grout, but they still left the tops of all the boulders exposed. So it really made a rough ramp down to the wave. So I got there in about September in 2015, and we were open for about 2 months. Some of the surf community that was expecting a shortboard surf wave were not excited, rightfully so. And so that winter, right around the middle of October, we went back into the river because we were still under permitting to get into the river and do work. So, and just a couple of the people that we had to go through as far as permitting, since we're here. BPTA came up with this idea. Ben Park and Rec came on board to be the operators and maintenance managers of the park once it was built. We also had to get permitting through the Army Corps of Engineers. We had to get permitting through Oregon Department of State Lands. We had to get permitting through Department of Environmental Quality, as well as the Oregon State Marine Board, which is in control of basically patrolling waterways within Oregon for drunk people and other things like that. And then one of the most interesting and main agencies that we had to go through is U.S. Fish and Wildlife, specifically because they were protecting this indigenous species of frog called the Oregon spotted frog. I've been there 11 years now, or 10 years, and I still haven't seen one, so I don't even know if they exist. But they're the reason I have a job. The first time I met a lady from U.S. Fish and Wildlife, she said, "I don't care if you kill people in your park, I don't care about anything, but if you endanger those frogs, we're going to put federal crimes against you." Not against Ben Park and Rec, against the operator. So that was interesting. But truly the thing that makes this park what it is and makes it exist is because of those frogs, essentially, and using the pneumatic gates to keep their habitat, which is actually upstream of the park, within very tight parameters. It's about a 1.2 or 1.3 inch window that water elevation has to be at 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. So myself and the other wave shaper and bend basically split the time of every hour of the year. And when the river changes because of weather, dam releases, irrigation takes, snow melt, anything, we have to be watching gauges upstream as it's coming to us and compensate with those gates to keep that water elevation really stable. And because that's at the top of the park, every time we make an adjustment up there, the 4 recreational features below that are affected. So then we have to work our way down and fine tune those. And then usually it changes again and we have to do it all over again. So that's our job. This is going back. This again is the surf wave ramp. You can see it, taking some measurements there. At the top of that, you can see here, these are 3 of the pneumatic gates in the completely deflated position. So underneath each slab is a big bladder, and we can fill it with air and lift those basically up to a 90-degree angle if we want, which actually is its main purpose in this design was to change the pool height here for tailwater of the feature upstream. So each of our drops has a row of gates like that that allow us to shape the waves. I actually use these now a little bit to shape the surf wave, but at high flows, we'll get to that. Dun, dun, more sweet pictures. Cranes, it's a huge operation. Again, in Oregon, they care less about people's safety than they do about the environment. So all the equipment we use there use biodegradable, really expensive oil in it, hydraulic oil, which is essentially vegetable oil as far as I know. All this work had to take place in the winter because our flow is actually kind of backwards of typical flows. Not only does our river run south to north, but because of water rights and irrigation, it's actually it peaks out in the middle of summer and drops to almost nothing in the winter. So that was the only time we could get in there to do this type of work. So up here you can see, this is the top row of gates. We call these the flow control gates. At the very top of the park, those are the ones we're adjusting for this pool up here for the frogs. little mini cofferdam that we're working on there. Me and Hard Hat. There's a lot of time placing rocks like this. This excavator operator was really good. We'd have him pick up and adjust by just a few centimeters rocks that size. Each rock basically got puzzle pieced in, the ones that we couldn't grout. That's the engineer. That's the engineer in the bucket of the excavator. Another view of the top of the park. This is actually an area we're going to be trying to build a new surf wave in the next year to year and a half. Adding more grout to a lot of the groins. Again, this was just a stack of rocks before. It was quite dangerous. Adding some sheet pile, adding some forms. And then this was the first spring after the winter modification. We contracted Surf Anywhere, the guys from Canada. I'm sure you guys know them. And they came up with some really good ideas about, you know, have a smooth ramp and channelize the ramp. And so our engineer followed that and came out with this, which was obviously a massive improvement from where we were. But as you can see, this is some of the initial testing. These are two more Obermeyer gates, kind of halfway up. And then the engineer put these things, which were essentially curbs for a sidewalk. They were about that tall, and he promised me that when the flow came up, they'd kick up a big face and it would somehow align itself with this face, and it'd be great. Big surprise it wasn't. The face over the gates when they were in the proper position was actually pretty good. But obviously the shoulders were convex instead of concave. This was, again, using some of those gates up higher to make little ribs and kind of concentrate the wave, but it was still nowhere near what it could have been. This, again, was that first spring. Sorry, we're jumping all around. Again, these are the controls that I see every day that I run the park off of. I can run it anywhere I have cell service. This is kind of the flow of the river. These are all, each one of these are gates. Those top gates I was talking about, surf gates are here, and actually there's more gates there that we added. Elevations of all our pools, they're very specific, like I said, down to the 100th of a foot. And yeah, that pool specifically is this pool up here where the frogs are, and it's a very small window that number has to stay in. So we were surfing in the spring. Everyone thought the wave was a huge improvement, like I said, but it was still not great. And then this problem came, and basically this is the feature below the surf wave, and it was supposed to be for kayaks. There's three, what they called, they're not wave blocks. Or are Shipley's wave blocks or are Shipley's rapid blocks? Okay, these are wave blocks, and they're 20,000 pound cubes of concrete that were also used in Glenwood Springs, Colorado. I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with that wave. And they work great in Glenwood because they get like upwards of 20,000 CFS there, and it can make some really great waves. This was our river rather, only gets up to about 2,000 CFS. I'm sorry, I don't know CMS, but so those rapid blocks, as you can see, were very exposed. And then the engineer had the bright idea to put another row of Obermeyer gates here for tailwater for the surf wave, but the problem was is as you lifted those up, the water began plunging on the very crest of those concrete blocks, and if you lifted them up more, the water actually plunged behind them into a hole, and I'm shocked that no one died there. But what happened was we got about halfway through the summer. We had used a bunch of sandbags, I won't get into it, but to try to mitigate that, and I came to work one morning and all the sandbags had gotten flushed out, and I basically had to make the judgment call in the middle of July to shut down the wave upstream because I was positive someone was going to get seriously injured or killed there. So that then started the next round of modifications that we had to wait for. There's some of the sandbags. I did it like 3 times. I really tried. They just kept, they kept washing away. Now there's a reporter walking in high heels on the rocks. This is a picture of that wave we were just looking at when it's working properly at high flows. It's actually a pretty good kayak feature. More sweet drawings. that's a clue of what's to come.
Excuse me, those wings are stainless or aluminum, or what do you use?
On that picture? Yeah, they're aluminum. I'll show you a picture of them in here in a second. This was just an idea because I was thinking, you know, as that wave didn't kick up on the side like it was supposed to, we needed to mimic the face of those gates that were working well. So, in the meantime, we actually used the top wave to make a surf wave. It was supposed to be for kayaking only, but we were able to use those gates to shape this small little wave, which was actually really fun. Kayaks and surfers enjoyed it alike. But I knew that there was more potential for the surf wave itself because those two gates together were about 20 feet across, but the channel walls were almost 40 feet across. So we were only utilizing about half of that face that was possible. Multiple ideas on how to make kind of adjustable, I don't know what that is. Oh, that's what it looks like in the winter. Belts on the gates freeze. So then again, this is the next winter, another coffer dam is built. Pumps in the water. More excavators in snow. I don't know if any of you guys have ever held metal tools when it's like the coldest I've ever been. That's why I don't wear wetsuits anymore. Nothing compares to that. So these are these are the first set of kickers, static kickers that I designed and was totally off on the angle of. Cost about $12,000 to Ben Park and Rec. They weren't happy, but I wrote a big email that went to everyone so they couldn't back out of it and said we have to replace these, and they obliged very appreciatively. These again are those wave blocks rather, and we're adding concrete to the back to avoid that pour over that was happening that I showed before. Pouring concrete. Let's see if we can see anything in there. We had, at any given time, these were 9-inch and 7-inch pumps. They were running round the clock, and this was the most water we could get out of those pools. I mean, it's just impossible. This rock wall would just sieve water through. We basically had the whole river going through this near channel, which blew that out, and we had to rebuild that as well. We're super efficient in Oregon, if you guys can't tell. More pumps, again, mini coffer dams. Okay, we got more out there. That looks pretty good. A lot of the stuff we had to do not only in the middle of winter, but at night. So in this case, we had to close off that entire road. It's a 2-lane road, pretty busy, just to be able to get the concrete boom, to get concrete down there. That job started at 9 o'clock at night and went till 3 or 4 in the morning. It was very cold. Pouring more concrete, smoothing out concrete. Okay, so this was right after I bolted in the River Right aluminum kicker and put water over it. I was terrified because I didn't know if it was going to work. And that was the first image that I saw of it that made me pretty excited. And there you can see with fairly small flow over it, they fairly well mimicked the gates when they were at the proper angle for surfing. And there you go. We turned a 20-foot wave into almost a 40-foot wide wave, which made it really good. Both of the shoulders actually got a little bit concave as well, even though it looks fairly flat there. My guess is due to surface tension on either of the stem walls. Just slowed that water down just enough to give it a little bit of a bowl. Another picture of the wave now at higher flows. Surfer getting low. Kid with a fish. Caught on a fly rod. That was a sign. There's a part of a group of signs that we worked with Surf Anywhere again to make some signage. This was far before the accident. We had, I always kind of knew leashes were a bad idea. We tried to, even after we put up this sign, I mean, I'd say 19 out of 20 surfers used ankle leashes specifically. There's me surfing. That guy makes the wave look big. He's tiny. That guy owns a surf shop in Bend now. Benny Benson, anyone know Benny Benson? Surfer in the international comp when he was a very young kid. Oh, that's me in Boise in the middle of winter. Me drinking a coffee on the wave. That's Skookum Chuck. These people who owned this little resort stole this picture of me and used it on their sign without my consent. They didn't even give us a free room. I was a little upset about that. It's Curtis Sizik. He's a pro snowboarder in Bend. But anyways, hopefully that kind of gives you an idea of some of the struggles we went through to get this wave where it is. We're now 10 years into it, like I said, and we're just now starting to get more community-based associations together. We don't even really have an official surf association now, but we do have a group that's starting, that's Paul's Wave, again, starting high school surf clubs. We're doing training for not only our fire department and search and rescue, but also these surf clubs, and then also private swiftwater technicians. They'll use our park fairly regularly to teach, because if they get me to go along, I can do pretty massive adjustments for them to recreate certain scenarios that they want to do. So it's really useful in that way. Upside down pictures. Any questions to this point? Yeah?
Right. You mentioned in the beginning, I'm not sure if I got it right, that it's like the park is free for everybody to...
Correct, yeah. So it's run by, it's not technically the city, but it's a park and recreation district. So yeah, like I said, half the money came from a bond measure that passed on a vote by like 1% in the last hour of the vote, so we almost didn't get it. And then we did have a couple private investors, and then again the Bend to Paddle Trail Alliance who invested as well.
So people who really like surfing, they want to help the community, they just chipped in the money and...
Pretty much. Well, when it got built, it was all kayakers, to be fair, at that point. So, and the contributions were, like in Boise, for instance, they had some very big, substantial investors that it contributed like a huge chunk of it. We had small investors, and then our park and recreation district, they work a little bit different than the typical park and recreation district. They're kind of privatized in a way, even though they're government. So they have a lot more money. They don't have to share money with, say, the police or the fire department or EMS. They get their own money. And again, that's kind of unique to Bend because they take so much pride in all their parks and everything. Like, for instance, our town is about 100,000 people, and we have 85 parks in that town, and they're like immaculate. Every single one of them. I mean, if a blade of grass is out of line, you know, because we just have that type of money to keep them that way.
So you don't have, it's not that popular that would be crowded and you would need some booking system or anything? I mean, just people come, first come, first serve?
Yep.
First serve, actually?
Yeah, first come, first serve. Yeah, it can get crowded. During COVID, they were threatening to make us shut the wave down because surfers were not social distancing on the wave. This was at the very beginning of COVID. And it's like, okay, so that was the only time we had a restriction, and I just painted a bunch of rocks hot pink and placed them 6 feet apart and said, stand on a rock and don't get any closer and only surf for an hour. But that was about probably a 6-month period. Other than that, it's a free-for-all. At most, we probably have 40 to 50 surfers in the lineup. But I get asked that question a lot, like, is there a procedure, like who goes first, how long are you supposed to surf? But as you guys probably know, it works itself out fairly well because the wave's not going anywhere. It's not like you're chasing after a perfect ocean wave on a surf day. It's just there. So there's not really this rush to get on the wave. And if you're trying to advance your surf skills, people don't really care. The only people that get yelled at are people who just get out and stand on the wave and just sit there, which there are a couple of those. After about a minute, they get the boot. Any other questions? Okay. There's a guy named Dustin Hall. Oh yeah, there you go. Surfboards there, I've noticed one of the bigger differences is That's phase 2. We have a lot shorter and wider and flatter boards than over here, especially on the bend wave. It just works. My favorite board to surf on it is like 4'1" and almost 22 wide, and it's just like a bar of soap essentially, but it works really well. This is one of the first contests we had. This was just an open contest, kind of more exhibition style. Some night surfing that happens pretty regularly. Some conceptual fins. That's that board I was just talking about, and it just fits that wave because the trough of the wave is a little bit tight, as you might be able to see. So I've seen as long as a 10-foot, or maybe a little over 10-foot longboard surfed, but they have to be on rail, and even then they have about like a couple inches off the nose of their board before they're going into the ramp. Well, that's some work with Surf Anywhere. It has nothing to do with the bend wave. There's my dog at City Wave Chelan. More work with Surf Anywhere. These are some of the signage we have that no one really looks at. And then, yeah, we can look at this. This is, again, the wave. The accident we had 2.5 years ago, there was about a 1.2-inch interface in this slot, which we weren't concerned about that size, but these Obermeyer gates that come prefabricated essentially have this hard rubber barrier that goes around it. In their eyes, I think, was to protect people from the gates themselves, which are steel. So they put this hard rubber on it called J-bulb, and in the accident, when the kid he fell, he planted his foot straight down, and it was actually able to flex that rubber downward. And his foot went down into that. It made a bigger slot. His foot went down into that, and then his leash that it was just a traditional, I think it was a 6-foot ocean leash, went straight back. His board went straight into a tombstone, which then pulled his foot even deeper into that slot. And the leash stretched from about 6 feet to, I think, close to 20. So it's a good show of how much force was on that. And there was nothing he could do. But since that time, we installed, in the springtime, some HDPE, high density, or no, what is it? UMHW, ultra high molecular weight plastic, which is really dense but really slippery. So now that J-bulb rubber rides up against that, and it's tight. There's zero gap there. Zero possibility for that to happen again. This is some Swiftwater training at the wave. When I run scenarios, what I'll do is, like with the fire department, they'll start on the bank. They'll act as if they just got dispatched on a call. Anytime they get a call located at the whitewater park, they have my personal number and the other wave shaper's personal number. They call us as they're responding to the call, and then we're able to, even if we're not there physically, able to isolate certain sections. So if there's a problem in the whitewater channel, we can lift up all those top flow gates and not completely get rid of the water, but drastically decrease the velocity of the current as well as the depth.
How much time does it take to close the gates?
It depends on the flow. Because all the gates run off of a single compressor, the more gates you move at once, the slower they move. But in the case of like the accident or in this training, it's about 2.5 minutes from the time I hit the button. So fairly fast. And then we only have about, once the gates are up, we only have about 10 to 12 minutes to work in that area before water starts overtopping or going into other channels, one of which is the tuber channel, where we get a 250,000 tubers every summer going through that. So in the event of an emergency, we have a system where we basically block off that tuber channel to keep tubers from going down it while I lift the gates, because if we didn't do that, it'd be like class 3 whitewater through there, and drunk tubers in Bend already struggle enough with rapids this tall. So you got to keep everyone in mind in those scenarios. I saw a boogie board foil this last summer, which was the coolest thing I've ever seen. You guys ever seen those here? That's it on our bottom wave. So here's some One of the things that I've noticed is this park specifically has gone from really a kayak-centric park to a surf-centric park. Even in the very beginning, when we just had the first or second iteration of the surf wave, surfers were just there champing at the bit, basically 10 to 1 for kayakers. A lot of the local kayakers claim that the kayak features weren't that good and that's why they don't come, but I really don't think it's that simple. You know, 2 years after our park was built, our CEO basically said, he's not our CEO, he's our executive director, said that if he could do it all over again, he would have built 4 surf waves. And luckily what's happened because of my time being able to tweak stuff there with the adjustability, we do have surfable features on all 4 of the waves. This one's obviously the most popular, but our lower wave is now a really popular longboard wave. That's been a new thing just in the last couple of years. And then the other 2 waves are both surfable. Again, not as good as the main wave, but this is Travis, who owns a surf shop there. I don't know how many boards he sold, he won't tell me, but he really made an industry out of this wave, which is pretty awesome. Let's see. There's an OG picture from Boise back in the day. I'm in the camouflage doing a wave shaver. Pictures like this make me really happy. Those girls are all about 14, 15. They triple up on their bike and share their surfboard. It's really cool to see. Just a little picture from the control booth. Everything's super simple. Again, it's low pneumatic, or it's pneumatic, low pressure. The gates at full inflation are like 10 PSI at most. I don't know what that is in bar, but way less than even like a bike tire or a car tire. Each one of those dials pertains to 1 gate. We have 26 gates throughout the park. We've also kind of inspired multiple local organizations to do scavenging and diving. This is a guy from Loot the Deschutes. Anyone heard of Loot the Deschutes? No? They return a lot of cell phones and rings and other things, mostly from the tuber channel again, to people, but they're really successful. And then these are some pictures from just a few months ago. We got a new engineering firm on board, the company who just did the Salida, Colorado wave. They're actually local in Bend, and the head engineer is a good buddy of mine, so we're really happy to have them on board. We basically went out on this project and took 1,300 bathymetric measurements, basically every single elevation on the bottom of the park, and compared it to design as built and then what it is today, because again, it's been 10 years. Again, this is a top wave. It's got almost 4 feet of drop, and it's almost unused. The kayakers, like I said, don't like it, and we're gonna try to take some of my napkin drawings again and turn that into a surf wave. There's a surf shop owner and my dog. This is the Bend High School surf team, which again is a new thing. We have 3 surf teams now, and they're all required to do swiftwater training that's put on by our pseudo surf association, which is great. We just did our 3rd training like a week ago. And we hire swiftwater technicians from around the state to instruct, and then a few volunteers come in as well. But it's been really good to see those kids. They practice all sorts of scenarios, learn river basics. Here's just some more cool stuff of an article. There's that boogie foil. God, that thing's awesome. Can't do that on the main surf wave because that mast is about that tall. Anyways, this is a GromCon we just had for those surf clubs. We had kids from Chelan. I think we had 2 from Boise that came. It was mostly Bend. That was just this summer. Had like 40 participants. All the proceedings went to Central Oregon Surf Team Association, which is doing the high schools. Very cool turnout. You can see the bazillions of tubers in the background. You can literally walk across tubes in the middle of summer. It's disgusting. Makes me sick. Again, kind of a view of the park. And yeah, we just finally got all this nice vegetation on the island. A lot of these willows and things, and they're all going to be ripped out when we do this project here in a year. But I don't care if it means we have more waves. This was the awards ceremony of the High School Surf Association. The winner actually got like a $800 custom shortboard, which was pretty cool. This is how the guy advertised for it. There's my dog. Oops. This was again training. All these kids were actually swimming the whitewater channel, so just jumping in at the very top, going through all 4 rapids while there were people using the wave, which was pretty funny to see. And a little debriefing. Okay. All right, I know I kind of jumbled around with a bunch of stuff, but please ask any questions you have on anything. I tried to keep myself focused. Anything? Nothing? Okay. Thank you. Sweet. All right. Ball Primus to the front.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I have a lot of questions.
Yeah.
My first
Yeah.
is, you described the process of the wave, and each of the steps seem to be like a quite big project.
Yeah.
The winter reconstruction process. How it works with your water lord or the company? How they have to trust you a lot, because I can imagine that all the steps are quite costly.
Yeah. Luckily, during the winter, we don't have to worry about irrigation, which we don't really have to worry about as much as like Paul does. But essentially, in all those projects, even when they built the original park, it was just a matter of diverting between these 3 channels. The same that was coming in the top was going out the bottom. So even when this channel was completely dried up, we were still sending the same amount of water down there to irrigators and stuff. So,
I meant like my question is rather like, how did you negotiate? How did you persuade them that they should
to let us do it?
Next,
Yeah. Most of it, like 90% of it was covered. We did have a contingency fund for the project, so we ended up using that to do the modifications. And we actually were able, with a lot of negotiation and coercion, talk them into extending our permitting time frame. But it was not easy, and I wasn't directly part of that, but the people that were said it was very difficult, especially with like the Army Corps of Engineers. They were not happy that we kept asking for one winter and then another winter, and they'll probably never give us a permit again, but we got it done at that time. Is that what you're asking?
Thanks.
That makes sense. Any other ones? No? Okay.
So if not, I use my opportunity. Because the tubers, as I was talking about the project of moving the workers to the next one in reconstruction. So this tubers are considered to be like an interesting source of commercial income. So
Yeah.
So what's your general experience with the tubers? I know that it's free of charge, but would you, after your experience, recommend to go this way, or rather?
If you want to make money, make it for tubers. Yeah. So yeah, it doesn't cost any money for them to use the tuber channel. And this is actually an old picture, but there's one company, actually that red building right there, that took over tube rentals. They rent them for right around $20 American for like 2 hours. And when you're on the river in the middle of summer, they probably have 80 to 85% of the tubes on the water. So 250,000 tubers, they have 80 to 85% of that at $20 per. And then it costs more to take the shuttle back if you want to do that. So yeah, they make a lot of money. And Ben Park and Rec partnered with them when this happened. And I don't know the percentage we get, but we do get some of that money kicked back for the park. But they make a lot of money. All I know is the owner of that, who started that, when he started making a lot of money, he started traveling the world, and I see him like 1 week a year now, because he's just gone. Where's Jeff? Oh, he's in Nicaragua. Where's Jeff? Oh, he's in Russia. He's just everywhere. Any other ones? Safety, money, shaping. Usually when we shape those or adjust those top gates for flow divisions or for changes in the flow for the frog habitat, we're usually moving them by 0.2 of 1 psi. So very small increments. And you can move one of those gates 0.2 of a psi and it'll affect all 3 features like very noticeably below.
Right, guys, just one more question.
Yeah.
On a regular day, normal day, what do you guess is your water level on the wave actually on the concrete and also on those gates? Because I saw you had pretty long fins. And,
yeah.
What is the water level?
The depth of it? At peak flow, it's probably close to 2 feet of depth. In the winter, if we're running, it can be down to 6 to 8 inches, somewhere in there. So we do use smaller fins or even skimboards in the winter.
If you fall, I mean...
Yeah, you have to treat it like it's like a mix of skateboarding and surfing. You have to, you're going to hit in the winter. In the summer, you don't hit anything. No. Even the shoulder season, spring and fall, it's not an issue. But in the middle of winter, if we're running it, you will hit. There's one other interesting thing with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife. They're actually implementing a change to this whole river because of how weirdly it's been managed over the past 50 years. They're going to basically take those really summer high flows and those really low winter flows and go like this for all year round. So in about 2 to 2.5 years, this wave will be at an excellent flow all year round. So that'll be nice.
Do they have a big lake upstream where they
there's a reservoir. It's about a day and a half water velocity upstream. So, but it's not big. It's only about 200,000 acre feet. So I don't know how they're going to run the river that high all year, but they apparently have a plan.
And currently, how many days of surfing do you get per year?
It varies. We've had a couple of years where we surfed essentially the whole year minus maybe 2 to 3 weeks. On an average year, we're typically surfing from about March, the 3rd week of March to about the 3rd week of October, typically. Last year we were in that time frame, and then we had about a month-long period in the middle of winter where we had enough flow where we were also surfing then. So
what do people in town think about the entire project? Like non-surfing people, are they still happy, or would they say never again?
At first, like the first probably 2 to 3 years, there was a lot of locals that were like, I can't believe we spent that much money. And that was, again, when the wave wasn't working that well. They couldn't really see it in its full function. Nowadays, I don't really hear anything other than this is so awesome. If they're from out of town, they're like, we want one of these in our town. On this bridge, on any given summer day, again, this is an old picture. This is shoulder to shoulder people all day, and they're just like shocked. They think it's the coolest thing ever. I've talked to so many people that are looking at a surfer on the wave and they still don't get it. They're like, wait, the river is flowing this way and he's going this way. Is he coming upstream? Is he going to come under the bridge? Yeah, it's pretty ubiquitously loved at this point.
We should actually, you know what we should do from here, from Europe, we should get all these city officials from these cities where they don't want to allow us to build the wave, put them on the bus, put them on the plane, fly them to Oregon, and then, oh, okay, we like it, okay, we'll build it.
Yeah. I mean, there's been a couple of very rough studies on the indirect economic impact of this, but I mean, I start, tube rentals aside, you start thinking about all the spectators, all the surfers that come. I see people from out of state and even out of country on almost a daily basis. And if you look or think of hotels and accommodations and food for all those people, I mean, it's had a massive impact on that town for sure. Anything else? Yeah.
The visitors are coming there to watch the canoes, the tubing, the surfers. Where are they concentrating?
The surfers are by far the most exciting. That's what people want to see. They'll be standing on this bridge and see a kayak or even a really good playboater right there throwing huge loops, and they're like, "You can surf on a river?" Like that's all they care about. That's all they see. It's far more exciting to people.
We kayakers are very jealous.
USA, yeah. I've noticed that in Bend a little bit. Most of the kayakers there traded in their kayaks now and have a surfboard. Anything else? All right, thank you guys.